Some people think shounen is peak, but romance is boring. Some people think romance has great characters, but shounen is poorly written. If you think either of these things, you're dumb, but it's not your fault. There's a common misconception that shounen is that action genre about fights between superpowered teenagers. But the popular romance manga Nisekoi, the cooking manga Food Wars, and the manga Bakuman all serialized in the most exclusive shounen magazine, Weekly Shonen Jump, home to most of the biggest hits of all time. How did those miscellaneous series meet the criteria to be in the same magazine as Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, and One Piece? Well, because shonen isn't a genre at all. Shonen is a demographic. Let me explain. In Japan, published media is divided into demographics instead of genres when deciding how it should be distributed. Obviously, you don't want to put a story for young girls right next to Elfin Lied, so you have to group together titles you believe appeal to the same audience. So the whole content of the publication is attractive to the people you would like to purchase it. There are 4 main manga and 5 main anime demographics in Japan. And we're going to start with shonen as a point of focus. These are the stories targeted primarily at a young male audience, your schoolboys. They will focus on topics likely to be appealing to young to teenage boys like sports, picking up girls, and fighting, or anything similarly intense or competitive, and a common theme will be rising as some form of underdog, bettering yourself through hard work and achieving some sort of lofty goal. These themes are where demographics separate themselves from each other. Let's imagine a story with both fantasy and romance elements. Written for shonen fans, that'd be this season's #1 hit, DanDaDan. What about for the other main demographics? Well, seinen's for adult males, and that's where Berserk would fit in. Shoujo targets a young female audience, so we'd have My Happy Marriage, and Josei is for adult women, so My Next Life is a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom fits the bill. 4 stories, each with romantic elements and fantastical powers, that couldn't possibly be more different because even though the genres line up, the demographics are all different. Put simply, a genre describes story elements while a demographic describes who the story is supposed to appeal to. With DanDaDan being so stupid popular at the moment and being one of the rare stories that brings romance into a traditional battle shonen, I thought now was as good a time as any to clarify that point that's been confusing anime fans since the beginning of time. And while I've got your attention, I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you about a story I really like that spits in the face of everything I just tried to explain to you. Surviving romance. This is an isekai romance, time loop regression, zombie apocalypse survival thriller. I've spoken a little about this before, but I have subscribers now, so this is a perfect chance to push my propaganda and get people to read this peak. Hear me out. This is Cherin Yun. She was originally the protagonist of the novel I'll Love You Every Day, a perfectly normal high school romance story about a perfectly perfect girl who ends up with an absolute sweetheart. Unfortunately for her, she gets her body and whole life hijacked. For an unknown reason, a tragic reader of Cherin's novel comes to inhabit her body, and this new Cherin loves that she finally gets to live a perfect life, relishing every moment leading up to the great day we witness in Chapter 1, the male lead's love confession. New Cherin follows every tiny little detail from the novel to make sure nothing goes awry, and that leads her right to the fateful moment and fateful spot where it's all meant to happen. But even though she followed the script, it looks like Romeo's copy got lost in the mail because he was not supposed to show up as a zombie. Cherin gets away, but the apocalypse is already in full swing and she gets mobbed, only to wake up at the start of the same day. If she avoids going to school, she dies instantly, but if she makes it to school, she falls victim to the zombie hordes, unable to save the one person who means anything to her. Her infinite loop of suffering begins, and she seems destined to suffer perpetually until one loop she loses her sense of self. Going through the motions, mindlessly walking to her gory death, she gets saved. Who saves her? She has no idea. Since she came to this world, she obsessed so deeply over just one boy that every other person just appears as a shadowy, indistinct haze to her. Everyone's an extra. She didn't care before, but after years of living through this tortuous day, this was the first time she worked with someone, the first time she had a friend, the first time she felt happy to be alive. As she finally begins to form a human connection with someone, the haze begins to clear to reveal her true form. But before she can even say her name, she is killed. I have no idea whether this was made for man, woman, young, or old, but I know who it was meant for, and it was meant for me. Charon's story of learning to see the extras as people so she can form a band to resist the zombies and find the person who restored her will to live is beautiful. It has a bit of something for everyone. Definitely go check it out on WEBTOON, the sponsor of today's video. Like the video if you liked the video, subscribe. This has been Ken-chan saying, actually...